First of all, thank you for inviting me to this event. I just want to share, I grew up in East Baltimore. I love Baltimore City. My mother had 8 kids, 2 sets of twins. I'm the second set. My service to community started when my mother made sure that we cleaned up front of our house. When we had a furnace, coal furnace, I had to go down there and take the coal out to the end of the yard. And we had to sweep in front of our doors. We had to clean people's steps. That's what my community service had. That elevated me to want to be involved in the community. And I ended up running for office before for House of Delegates and served on the State Central Committee, which is a 4-year term with 4 terms. And after I did that for my own service at home, it elevated me to want to be a city council person. And I have demonstrated, if you look at my literature, I have proven results in 3 years.
Thank you. Mr. Westry?
Thank you all for coming. I appreciate the level of support at this level of, as far as like folks being involved. A lot of us are thinking about the presidential election. Thank you for kind of getting all the way down to the city council. A little bit about me. I am a public interest attorney. My background is in housing. My most recent work was with Maryland Center for Legal Assistance, where I help people who came to the courthouse without a lawyer. People who cannot afford a lawyer for small claims would see people like me. I'm happy to have helped over 2,000 litigants who are dealing with issues around consumer debt collection, landlord-tenant law, and wage theft. Before my work at Maryland Center for Legal Assistance, I worked for 5 years at St. Ambrose Housing Aid Center, helping families who were facing mortgage foreclosure, tax sale foreclosure. In my part-time at St. Ambrose, I managed a tax site for Maryland Cash Campaign, preparing taxes for 3 years for folks who are below a certain level of income. I've spent my entire career focused on Baltimoreans and focused on economic equality. I want to bring that fight to City Hall. I believe that I'm the candidate that can do it. I believe I'm the candidate that has heard and have actually served real people. And I would love to have this conversation with you all. Thank you all for coming.
Mr. Heilker?
Good evening. I'm Dave Heilker, and I'm going to be the next city council person from District 12 because I believe that Baltimore is a city of giants. We have a gigantic, often unfair reputation that precedes us. We have gigantic, often egregious water bills. We have massive struggles with substance abuse disorder. 700 people are killed every year because of addiction. Another 300 plus due to homicide. We have giant institutions who refuse to pay their fair share. And we have politicians that funnel money through shady corporations and corporate fundraisers because they want to keep big money in city politics. It's because of this that since the beginning of our campaign, Baltimore has these giant institutions, these Goliaths, that they've been terrified that you might elect someone named David. For the past 5 years, I've helped to turn progressive candidates into progressive elected officials. When I worked for Delegate Robin Lewis, who was the first black person ever to represent District 46 as an elected official, or as in the House of Delegates rather, we were outraised by gigantic interests by 5 to 1. And at that same time, in those last 5 years, I've been asked to create impactful messages for important work like education. I'm the communications director at Strong Schools Maryland and for Baltimoreans for Educational Equity. We're currently fighting to fund schools and fight for the Kerwin Commission recommendations to make sure that our kids get the same education as kids in Montgomery County and Howard County. And I'll continue that fight for you on the City Council. I hope to earn your vote tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Crum?
Good evening. My name is Gary Crum. I'm a native son of Baltimore and a native son of the 12th District. Those who have followed me for the last 4 to 6 years watched me grow from a young man to a recent loving husband and father of 2 beautiful kids, my 1-year-old baby girl, Kyla, and my 4-year-old son, Casey. Why I'm running? Because my community and my city conditions demand it. I've been able to experience the highs and lows of our city, and if you don't know the source of the problem, how can you solve it? I live, work, and suffer and prosper right here in Baltimore in the 12th District. That's why I'm running. People always ask, what have you done in your community? Well, me, I've been working nonstop before elections and well after. Here's what I've achieved in the last 4 to 6 years. I have helped over 101 100 old and new residents through the process of obtaining affordable housing in Oliver and surrounding communities. I have helped over 30+ ex-offenders attain jobs, return around Tuesday, and other resources, even taking them personally to job sites. I successfully helped communities fight to get $300,000 grant from Rex and Parks to rebuild our basketball court and have it named after community legend Calvin Scruggs, where we hold annual events for the youth and seniors. 4. I led community in Dr. Bernard Hurst Elementary School to get a grant for $500,000 to get the first Kaboom playground built in our community. I didn't wait for an election year to get the work for our community. And as your next councilman, I will bring that same energy, passion, and solution-driven ideas to the 12th district and the city hall. Thank you.
Now we'll have questions given to us by our panel. Charlene Couch, Russell Irwin, and Kyle Fritz. Sorry, I'm having to speak on.
Good evening, gentlemen. What we'll be doing, since Mr. Stokes did his opening statement and you went down to your left, and we'll start with the next person, with the next question, and move successfully down the line. So each question will be answered by a different person first. Okay, so here's the first question. What will be your procedure or protocol for responding to residents' inquiries and requests for help with issues? An example, a city agency is unresponsive to residents or not doing their job properly. The resident contacts your office for help. What would you do? Please be specific and include your specific timelines for response to the resident. So, Mr. Westry.
Yeah, so responses to inquiries from constituents is probably the number one issue that most city council people have to deal with. I would say, based on knocking on doors, I've heard that our current city councilman is not as responsive as other city council people. It's a couple quick things. If someone calls your office, they should get a response the same day, with knowing that followed by a deadline of when they'll get a resolution. So if someone calls my office on a Tuesday, they should get that response the same day, and with a resolution date to happen within ideally 48 hours. Some issues are more complicated that may require additional steps taken by my office, but the individual should be getting updates every 48 hours until it's resolved. That's how I would handle that issue. Every 48 hours.
Thanks for the question. So back in 2015 and 2016, I was the communications director for Councilman Zeke Cohen's office, or he was not the councilman at the time, he was the candidate. And one of the things that Zeke initially thought was that he was going to get to continue to run his nonprofit day-to-day and also be a part-time city councilman. By the end of the race, he understood that he needed to be a full-time council person, even though it's listed as a part-time job. And one of the things that was critical that his predecessor, Mr. Jim Kraft, had done very well was constituent services. So Zeke wanted to have a very transparent, very, very open constituent services model. As a part of his strategy team and part of his communications team, that was a big focus for us. So I helped design the spreadsheet that Councilman Cohen uses now, that he posts in Baltimore City Voters every month, that shows you where your constituent services are and where your constituent requests are every month, what they have to do with, where they are categorically. I designed the tracker. Like, I believe it was me and his now or former chief of staff, but then campaign manager, who designed this together. This is something that is very critically important to me. This is something that I think, for better or worse, is one of the critical things that a council person has to do. It would be nice if we could just focus on making good laws and passing good policy, but we have to, fix the cracks in the road and get trash picked up. So that will be a priority for my office, and I'll do it with tools that I've helped create.
So me, I'm a hands-on person. As a councilman, I would handle that situation by following up whatever agency she had called. Once I followed up with that agency and the problem wasn't resolved, I would then myself personally go out to that person and figure out what I can do myself to help the situation. I believe that a lot of times, we want to use the councilman title, but really, as you being a neighbor, as you being a community leader, as you being a community advocate that can get things done. always don't have to go through certain agencies to get stuff done, and that's what I would do as your councilman.
I have a great track record of constituent service, and the reason why I have that is because I have good relationships with agencies. When I get a call or email from a constituent, my staff is right on top of it. And if the constituent already been calling and they have a 311 number, they should not be waiting 15 to 30 days, 45 days. I immediately pick up the phone, talk to the agency head, they should not have to wait. It's because you have to have a relationship with city agencies. When a constituent call is frustrated, that they've been waiting 45, 50 days, have a 311 number, and they'll get no response. I'm a hands-on person, but I know how city government can be slow. I know how city government works, and I know how it don't work. Because I've been around it long enough to understand that the constituent is first, and that's where we work out our office.
Next question by Russell.
What is your position on the makeup of the Board of Estimates? If you are not in favor of the current configuration, how would you change it and why?
So thank you for the question. This is an important issue facing our city. The current makeup of the Board of Estimates is untenable because the Board of Estimates should not exist. We have the largest city in America to still have a Board of Estimates, and it clearly doesn't work. We are seeing with almost every administration double dealing and sweetheart deals that again keep power funneling toward the top instead of building it up from the bottom by building out power, by getting consensus, by organizing communities, by doing the grassroots work. We need participatory budgeting, and we need that now. We need the Fair Election Fund, and we need that now. And we need to get rid of the Board of Estimates, and we need that now. And the only way to do that is to have people kind of get into the weeds with us on this like wonky stuff that doesn't sound particularly interesting, but that continues to stymie poor and working class folks in our city.
So I remember in 2016, I was probably one of the only candidates that was talking about amendments and how we are outdated. Our policies are outdated. Our charter amendment is outdated. And now, because of all the scandal and stuff that has been going on, everybody is putting in amendments and wanting to do stuff. But I totally agree that we need to get rid of the Board of Estimates because one, the mayor should not have full control of the Board of Estimates. Two, city council doesn't even get to tell where the budget. We got a budget, but city councilman can't even direct where some of that money needs to go in their communities right now. All we did voted yes or no. So we most definitely get rid of the Board of Estimates.
I think the Board of Estimates should be 3 people, not 5. The mayor should not have control of the Board of Estimates. Second of all, I go to Board of Estimates meetings. You have other community leaders or community residents in their district, they go to the Board of Estimates because they want to follow where the money goes. And I'm a co-sponsor of the Fair Election Fund. So I'm doing my job in terms of being at the Board of Estimates, anything that comes through the Board of Estimates. But there should only be 3 members on the Board of Estimates: President, City Council, the Mayor, and the Controller.
Kyle? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I apologize.
yeah, I think the structure needs to be reformed. I've listened to a couple of different approaches. I actually agree with Councilman Stokes about reducing the amount of power that the mayor has with the Board of Estimates. For folks who don't understand, the mayor basically gets 3 of the 5 votes. And it's a very easy way to funnel money from your donors directly to funnel city money from the city to your donor base. It brings up a lot of other issues around whether we should change the way that we do campaign finance. It brings into question about the amount of information that's getting down to voters about important votes that are at the Board of Estimates. And I mean, for my office, while we work within the structure that the way that it is, until we get a charter amendment that changes the Board of Estimates, it would be my office's job to inform the community about important important procurement that's coming before the Board of Estimates, and that's what I would do under our current situation, and I would support charter amendments to reduce the mayor's power at the Board of Estimates.
I just wanted to ask a follow-up question because a couple of you in the context of the Board of Estimates had mentioned the Fair Election Fund. Can one of you just quickly explain what that is, please?
So the Fair Election Fund was primarily sponsored by Councilman Chris Burnett and District 8 in order to really return the power of political fundraising to the people, to communities. Right now we see a lot of big donors, and what this does, this creates a fund that will match donors up to a certain amount, and it will disqualify candidates who have donors above a certain amount, so they can't participate in the Fair Election Fund. So it just democratizes political fundraising.
And what office is that for?
That is for, so I believe that it starts out as just mayor, but someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it will eventually be for all city wide.
Yeah. So they have there's a system for each office. There's a cap of $1 million for the mayor's office, and then it gets down to I think $112,000 at a city council level. You wouldn't be able to take PAC money, so no money from unions, which is where I've gotten a lot of my support, and then no money from donors over $150. So yeah, those are the key changes. And then of course no money from corporations.
Okay,
And I am a co-sponsor of that bill. If you go back and look at my finances, I don't get no money from those big donors.
Quickly, before we go on to the next question, because we're on a time schedule, if you're in favor of the Fair Election Fund, show your hand.
I'm a co-sponsor.
Okay, thank you. Next question.
Can I say one more thing though about the fair? So it will basically give. So we have young people that's wanting to run for office, and what happens is that because of these big donors and these people that's been giving money to these mostly incumbents and stuff, it kind of deters young people from running. So this is going to give a lot of young, passionate people a chance to have a fair shot of winning elections with this. I'm hoping that's what it will be. That's it.
Thank you.
Bill, legislative question. So the question is, name a decision that the current city council, name a decision by the current city council that you disagree most strongly with within the last 4 years. What is it, and what would you do differently? Here, let's start with
Decision.
the current city council. So a law that they passed or didn't pass, or a bill that they passed or didn't pass.
I mean, I can't think of one right at this moment that I didn't like. For the last couple of laws that they actually passed, I actually agree with.
Go ahead and name them that you agree with.
The one that Shannon Steve just sponsored, which was I think union bill. But yeah, I haven't had any that I didn't disagree with.
You talk about me, I think actually my bills that I supported, I looked at how it affected the community. I looked at it how it affected business. I just don't vote for a bill. One, if I don't know nothing about it. My colleagues, when they introduce a bill, they need to come talk to me. When they introduce amendments, and then they on the council floor and I don't know nothing about it, I don't vote on it. I look at the bill, see exactly what it does and what it don't do. So most of my bills have been very transparent. They've been good bills. So I don't think I have a problem supporting some of the bills I support. They're good bills.
So there's nothing on from the present legislative calendar that you disagree with, Councilman Stokes?
What are you talking about from my colleagues?
Yeah.
Well, I look at the PLAs with the unions. A lot of times that's a great bill, but it hurt non-union companies when you introduce that kind of PLA. So I was a co-sponsor on it, but being a co-sponsor means you're just a co-sponsor. We need to have hearings on that, invite the community in, invite in small business, invite in non-union, how it affects them, because it can't just be one side. We need to hear from both.
Would you clarify what a PLA is for the audience?
It is the, I can't even remember. and it's agreement with the unions and the employers, meaning they have to have union workers there as a union representative. That's what the PLA is.
So it's a project labor agreement, and it basically says that for a project to go forward, that the developer, if they're going to take city money, that they will have to abide by certain rules, pay a certain amount of money. Ideally, it'll be a prevailing wage. It'll be basically a prevailing wage, a living wage, and or hire union workers. The question about the
Disagree.
so again, my background is in housing, and I am very progressive, and I think our city council passed a law recently about the licensing and the licensing of housing units, and a couple of great things. They said that every landlord has to be licensed and registered. That's really good. But they also created a loophole for some of the larger developers to not require them to have the same regulations. And they also did not include Baltimore City Housing to make sure that their housing itself is up to code. So it's one of those spaces where it really does target small landlords who may be trying to do the right thing, and it gives the larger landlords a loophole, and then it also lets the city off the hook. I think we could have done better with that. I recognize that we had to negotiate, but I think we negotiated some of the wrong things.
Okay, so there are 3 pieces of legislation that I flat out disagree with wholesale. One of them is the Comcast monopoly, which was renewed under Mayor Stephanie Williams-Blake. It's the reason you can't get Verizon, Fios, internet, or cable. Another one is the increases in water bills that we continue to see, that continue to get approved. And then the big one is like the TIF with Under Armour and with Plank and these gigantic developers where we divert money from the poorest people in Baltimore and working class people in Baltimore and redirect them to people who are already billionaires. It doesn't make any sense. Like, there's no reason that we should be paying billionaires to develop waterfront property in a top 25 American city. So I would really, really like to see community reviews on TIFs, and not every TIF is as big as the Under Armour or the Plank TIF, but that, and we really need to put a moratorium on raising water bills. We need to stop charging seniors for water at all. If you're 60 plus, you've been paying into the water system here for years and years and years. Let's make Hopkins pay for their fair share on water bills so that they can replace some of our infrastructure, because we don't see that. But the average person does see these huge water bills, and they don't have any way to deal with it. And until very recently, thanks to Senator Washington, you could get your house taken for water bills being overdue. So it's completely unconscionable. Those are things that I absolutely would stand against very vocally and unequivocally were I your councilperson.
The next questions will be about crime and policing. Charlie, you'll start.
Sure. Before I ask, Mr. Heilker, could you explain what a TIF is?
So a TIF is an incentive, tax incentive that is given to developers in order to develop in a neighborhood, typically in a place that is not looked at as particularly attractive to people considering moving somewhere in the city or moving into the city or businesses moving into the city. The 2 marquee TIFs that we've seen over the past decade or less are the TIF in Harbor East, which is Fells Point, District 1. It's an unbelievably wealthy part of the city, and in down in South Baltimore, where we saw the Plank Development TIF, which is currently quagmired in complications because we're just giving away billions of dollars to these wealthy developers.
Thank you. All right, this is the next question. There seems to be a lot of dangerous criminal activity in our neighborhood lately. What ideas do you have on solving the crime problem?
First of all, we gotta look at the root causes of crime and address it that way also. We are not gonna invest our way out of this, but the most violent criminals are back on the street using illegal guns. They need to be arrested. You talk about poverty. This just didn't happen overnight. You look at young people on the corners, because I say that because the school system has failed our young people. If they do not want to go to college, there's no opportunities there for them. So I brokered a deal with the CCC, the school system, and myself, and we can maybe open up Maryville and Emerson Westside Skills Center in the evenings for 18 to 24 years old. We have expungement. We have life skills. It starts in September this year till June, but it runs 4 years. We want to take the first 60 kids, not just in the 12th district, all over the city. The school system already guaranteed me once we do those 4 years, we can renew that. That's the way we attack crime with our young people, because in the school system, if you want to be a plumber, you cannot be a plumber for a half an hour and you got to go to math and all other classes. You got to create those opportunities. You have to open those schools up in the evenings from 5 to 9. That's how I'm addressing it. Also, I formed the Community Safety and Quality of Life Committee. I had the commissioner come and talk to the community leaders. He gone. Communities have to work together in times of crime. We can't do it all by ourselves, but if we work together as a whole community, not by boundaries, this is Broadway, East Side Island, we can't do that. Come up with a comprehensive crime fight plan, and we can address some of this crime this year.
The fundamentals of what Mr. Stokes said is right. We do have to address the opportunity issues and the equity issues. One of the things, and you'll probably hear a lot of us say something similar about trying to restore opportunity in impoverished neighborhoods. One of the ideas that came up while I was knocking on doors, a woman in Oliver asked me, she was like, why don't the police knock on our door like you knocked on our door and say, hey, I work this beat, I want to meet you, I want to, these are my hours, this is the time that I'm normally here, this is my phone number. And I've talked to some of the cops when I'm knocking on doors. There's a lot you can learn by being there and actually walking around a community. A lot of the cops feel nervous about engaging with the community. They feel like they've been scapegoated by politicians. And it's one of these things where we're in this space where we're with each other, we have to be with each other, but we're not connecting with each other. I would use my office to actually connect. I wouldn't just bring the police to community association meetings because not everybody actually shows up to community association meetings. I would use my office to get the officers out of their cars and say, hey, we're gonna go meet everybody who's here. But yeah, maybe I'll be able to pick it up.
Yeah, we are a city that has been facing a kind of a plague of crime, if you will. But something that has not been addressed yet this evening is that we have this organized crime syndicate in the city that continues to commit violence in especially poor and black communities, and that's the Baltimore Police Department, right? Like, we have an unbelievably, like, unapologetically opaque and unwilling to do anything but defend the interests of the wealthy police department that has shown year after year that they are completely corrupt. And that doesn't mean that every officer is corrupt, but it means that as an institution they are. So first and foremost, we need to really, really address criminal justice reform and get through this consent decree. I do applaud the Commissioner Harrison, because he does seem to be doing a good job in giving his level best. But we really, really need to rethink policing and what it means in communities. As far as the actual crime that's happening, the best cure for crime is a job. Okay, and I'll say it again, the best cure for crime is a job. At the beginning of the summer, when we heard all this chaos about the squeegee kids, I said, no one's listening to the kids, right? So I went down to 83 in President Street. I met with some of the squeegee kids that were there, and our campaign ended up hiring one of the squeegee kids. We paid him $15 an hour. We gave him his first summer job. He applied to the mayor's youth works program. He didn't get in, like one of 4,000 people, and he did everything right. We paid him $15 an hour. If I can do that as a grassroots campaign, the city can certainly duplicate that and get these kids into productive positions and on-ramps to union jobs.
All right, so education, jobs, and crimes will always be linked to each other. Until we provide education for our youth and adults so they can be able to get good paying jobs to get out of poverty. Then we can reduce crime in our city. Can't address one without the other. That's just a fact of where we at. Here are a few suggestions. This are things I will be doing as a city council, as advocating for the city or on the state side. Education, increase funding for pre-K 12th grade, put trades in all public schools. Mental health classes is a need in schools to address the drug problem and violence facing our youth. Jobs. We need a job task force to aggressively pursue young men who would be more likely to commit a crime or be a victim of crime, to give them a choice to change their lives. If we're honest, there are not a lot of choices here living in the conditions, poor education, and violence that most of us live in. This will also help you reduce crime rate. They say the day that you get your time is the day that you should receive services to help you when you are released. We have to ramp up job readiness, training, and more education with our reentry citizens, young and old, so we won't have repeat offenders.
All right. What are your ideas on holding officers accountable who commit brutality and preventing police misconduct in the first place?
I think officers should be held accountable. I supported the gag order in terms of people getting paid out, and they were saying that they couldn't speak. But we need to root out the officers that are in the police department that have done what they've done to African American young men and women who got arrest records during a O'Malley administration. And then you have to do that, but you can't paint a brush of all officers are bad. I work with a lot of officers, and I believe that Commissioner Harrison, because I went down to the vet Commissioner Harrison to come here because I know what he did down in New Orleans. And he's doing it, but it's not going to go away after 40 years of corruption in the police department. But I have seen some difference because Commissioner Harrison has put some mechanism in place to hold people accountable. Before that happened, the officers, the supervisors, they were doing exactly what they wanted to do. We had people that was a colonel, and they only was in charge of 2 people. So we got a commissioner that the council supported that went in there and started to change. Technology. We had the computers before then in the police cars. If there was a warrant, they had to go to the police station and print it out. The new technology now, if they get a warrant, they can print it right in their car off the computer. So it's technology, but Commissioner Harrison has done a good job in rooting out corruption in the police department.
Could you repeat the question?
What are your ideas on holding officers accountable who commit brutality?
Yeah, we, love her or hate her, Marilyn Mosby has been holding police accountable. I met with her, it was a few months ago, and listen, as an attorney, I don't do criminal work, but I recognize the difficulty that she's in. I recognize that she needs the police, and her biggest fight is not actually with the beat cop, it's actually with the Fraternal Order of Police. That's the union that organizes the Baltimore City Police. If you follow them on social media, if you follow them, they weaponize social media, they weaponize Twitter, and if anything, the Fraternal Order of Police is the real issue, not so much the individual police officers. I very much stand behind Commissioner Harrison. He has been doing his best to reach out to the community. He has gone to meetings that he does not have to go to. He's answered very difficult questions, and he appears to be trying to root out those bad cops. And I think a combination of the state's attorney and the current police commissioner, we can get to a place where we are rooting out those cops.
So as my associate, Mr. Westry, has mentioned, the FOP is a terrorist organization. Straight up, the Baltimore FOP.
I didn't call them a terrorist.
No, I understand. The FOP is a terrorist organization, and they try to criminalize black youth in Baltimore City, and they do it repeatedly, and they do it as an organization that is comprised mostly of white people who don't live in the city, right? It's stupid. So first of all, I think we should wholesale condemn the FOP via a city council resolution. Secondly, as far as police brutality goes, look, I have already come out and said that BPD is the #1 organized crime syndicate in the city. We have to navigate this consent decree well. We have to do it thoroughly, but we also have to take preventative measures, right? Like one of the things we need to do is worry about Hopkins, right? And I spent time throughout 2018 and 2019 advocating against the Hopkins police, this private police force that again seeks to criminalize our black youth. And now they want to come off campus and patrol our neighborhoods, and it does not create a safer space. We know it doesn't create a safer space, and the first step to reducing police brutality is to reduce police, right? Like we're spending $500 million with a B on police every year. Okay, we have like 10 or 12 officers who made $1 million over the last decade each, right? Like it's unconscionable. But we can't pay kids to have jobs at City Hall over the summer. It doesn't make any sense to me. And we've got to start cutting funding to the police when we ask about how we're going to pay them.
So first I want to say thank you to Wanda West for she spearheaded that whole gag order. And it's a great bill that got passed. Second, we, young black men growing up in the neighborhoods where the police being terrorized, we've been talking about, I know when I was 17, 18, we've been talking about GTF for forever. We knew where they was going. They got complaints on the top complaints, and nobody heard our calls, and we complained about them coming around there, beating us up, planting drugs on us, and things of that nature. But I know one thing we have to do. If you have more police officers that live in your community, you'll have less police brutality. Because they'll know who they'll know who the young kids are, they'll know who the parents are, and you can bring back that police and community collaboration. So we most definitely need more police officers to live in the city. So I'm hoping that that's something that I can work on as a city councilman to bring more police officers back into the city.
Our next question will be on education, schools, and youth. And Kyle will be answering that.
Before I ask a question, I just want to remind everybody that there is a card in your seats, so please feel free to fill out that card and raise your hand and give a question. We've got a lot of good questions here. This is the last question. All these questions, by the way, came from the website that was up before the event, so these are all audience questions. So the last question from this batch are, have you read the Crum Commission report on innovation and excellence in education? What is your position on the recommendations?
Thanks. Yes, I have read the Crum report, and I have grappled with how we will pay for Crum. One, we have to fully fund it. Two, the current recommendation is that the city increase its annual contribution to increase it an additional $300 million from what it is now. I believe that the state should actually be paying a good chunk of that $300 million. And I would work with our city delegation to make sure that the Crum Commission recommendations are fully funded. I don't think that we have another option. We've talked around a lot of the issues around opportunity and crime, and what we have to make sure that we're giving our young people a clear pathway to success. When I worked at Community Law in Action, and I was a law student, and I would go into a high school and I would talk to kids, and I would ask them, hey, did you ever think about going to law school? And they looked at me as if I was talking about something that was unachievable. And I had to explain to those young people, I was like, I was a C student in high school. You are an A student in high school. You can be a lawyer. We have to make sure that our kids aren't giving up at 15 and 16 years old.
So not only do I support the Crum Commission recommendations, I've been fighting for them for the past 2.5 years. Strong Schools Maryland is the #1 advocacy group statewide, and Baltimoreans for Educational Equity are the #1 advocacy group in the city, working on these recommendations, working to prove that, like, not only do we need to do this, but yes, we can afford it. To speak to Mr. Westry's comment about the increase in funding over the next decade, The state is picking up a big part of the tab, not that part that you mentioned, but they're paying a lot of additional money into every jurisdiction above and beyond what is currently paid. So the question of can we afford it? We can't afford not to, right? Straight up, we're in a situation where Strong Schools, who I work for, as I mentioned, we just did a return on investment report, which shows that the Kerwin Commission recommendations are actually profitable for the city within the next like 25 years. So when the kids who are babies now start graduating high school, okay, and they'll have more career and technical education opportunities, it will give parents more opportunities with pre-K for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. It will give parents the opportunities to return to the workforce sooner, which means 10,000 more single parents and especially moms getting back into the workforce. It means that we will have that teachers will be paid a fair amount, and in Baltimore City we do pay our teachers well, but throughout the state we don't. We can't afford not to do this, and if one generation misses out or another generation misses out on these opportunities, Baltimore is all but lost. We've seen the repercussions of not having fully funded education.
I recently just left my corporate job to go work at Baltimore City High School, which I'm now employee at Maryville High School. And the reason why I left is because I didn't want to spend the next 20, 30 years behind the desk. I wanted to be amongst the youth in the field, trying to help change some of their lives. And I'm telling you, we most definitely need the help. I have read a little bit of the current commission. I do support it a whole lot, but I most definitely know we cannot afford to tax the citizens for it though. We're already living in some bad conditions in a lot of neighborhoods, and people can't afford to pay higher taxes. So I support it, but not with taxing the people of the city of Baltimore. So again, a lot of schools, man, we need help in our schools. We need it definitely, and I do support the current commission.
First of all, the city school system is controlled by the state of Maryland. We don't control the school system. When Kirk Smoke was the mayor, he's turned that over to the state of Maryland. Why? We only spend 15 to 20% of our budget going to the city on our schools. That's the product you get. We have to increase education funding from the city part. Now, Kerwin, I think it's a great idea. I think we should do it. But we have to hold North Avenue accountable too. That's where it's got started. We can put all the money we want in Kerwin until we hold North Avenue accountable. You got teachers in Africa, and teachers in Africa supposed to be here teaching. Until we put some accountability in North Avenue, and we can't do it as a council person. I go to those meetings up there. The community need to go to those meetings. The same way I go to these schools and talk to these principals. I know what the need is. But we can have the Kerwin all we want. If you don't watch North Avenue and hold them accountable, we're going to be in this room again, talk about we short on money again.
We do a rebuttal.
Sure, Gary.
Right.
Go for it. Yeah.
So-
We're running good on time.
Okay, so Mr. Stokes, it's been 30 years. I'm 37. Baltimore City hasn't had an audit in about 30 years, right?
Not true. Not true. Councilman Carl Stokes introduced a bill when he was on the council to put an audit of city, and I don't know about North Avenue, but city agencies, maybe not the school system.
That's right.
But you gotta remember, your legislators in Annapolis is the ones that got called for the audit. We can sit there and call for audit all we want. We don't control the school system. It's controlled by the state. Go talk to your legislators and ask them to do an audit.
So,
We do an audit on city agencies every 2 years.
so that's what I'm, okay, so as a councilman, have you advocated to have a way that maybe the city can audit North Avenue?
I can go to my legislators, but I can't ask the state. I can't ask the school system so we can audit them. The state legislature. That's just like the police department. We don't own the police department. That's a state agency. When somebody gets sued, we have to pay the bill, not the state of Maryland. But we can call for audit. But right now, the state, the city school system is controlled by the state.
Yeah. So real quick, this is bad news for everyone, but Larry Hogan is a really terrible governor and just a villain, right? Like, he has told you guys for the last 5 years that we haven't had an audit of city schools, and we have. We have audits of city schools regularly under Dr. Santelises, and guess what? This whole like mythology about we're spending more money on every student than any other jurisdiction is not true, right? Because the way that funds are allocated, that's not how it works, and we really, really need to stop like taking what Larry Hogan tells us and running with it, because we end up with these painful narratives that lead us to believe that we are worth less than we are. We've got great students, we've got talented students, we've got smart students, we've got great teachers, we've got pretty good administrators, and like we have some really outstanding schools. A lot of them are not doing so well, but this whole thing about audits, I've been working in education policy for the last 3+ years. It's false. So if you want to know more about audits, I would encourage you to reach out to Ms. Jess Gardner at Olive. I would encourage you to reach out to Dr. Sonia Santelises, the CEO of City Schools. I would encourage you to reach out to Councilman Cohen in District 1, who is the chair of the Education and Youth Committee, because all of them can tell you, like, particularly the details of audits. And I know you all know your kids' teachers. Like, talk to your kids' teachers, because they know too. Because these policies affect the teachers more than anyone else except perhaps your kids.
Phillip?
The only thing I would say to Mr. Stokes is that instead of telling us to contact our legislator, like you are our closest elected official. You can also advocate with those elected officials. You can be a strong partner with those elected officials. That's the only point I wanted to make.
Our next questions will come from the audience, and the cards you have, and remember that you do have cards available on your seat if you decide that there's a question you would like to ask. Charlene Couch.
So I do have cards, and what I want to tell you is most of them were directed towards one person. So what I'll do is go through them, do the varied ones, and if there is one question, and most of them were directed towards Mr. Stokes, I guess because he is our current council person, then we'll give each person a chance to address the varied. Okay. So this is for Mr. Stokes. The legislation for rental housing, inspections, licensing, the scattered site units of the housing authority were exempted in, it says, this legislation. The 12th district has lots of vacant and poor conditions. Explain your support for this legislation. First of all, do you know the legislation I'm referring to? What can you
First of
name
all,
it?
the housing authority does 2 or 3 inspections a year themselves. They do that already. So you're gonna add another level of inspection. And the reason why the bill passed, you got people living in subsidized housing that you wouldn't have a dog living in. That was the reason for the bill. Not attacking the good landlords, but those landlords, I done been to people houses, I don't know why they even live there. That was the idea behind the bill. HABC do 2 to 3 audits a year on their own property.
So does anybody else want to answer?
So I've helped people who are in the situation that Mr. Stokes is talking about. They are in this place where they found a landlord who is willing to accept their credit, regardless of how it is, but at the same time, and give them a rent that they can afford. But at the same time, that housing would not pass inspection. And a lot of us, I'm looking out at folks who know this. These are a lot of people in the private market who can't afford market rate rent in Baltimore City right now. And I will sit in front of them and say, well, this is your option to take your landlord to court. You can file a rent escrow case. You can force an inspection from housing and get these improvements done. And then they say to me, listen, if I get into a battle with my landlord, I'm afraid of what they're going to do, if they're going to retaliate. And like I was mentioning before, this licensing legislation was meant to sort of cure some of that, but we're not getting at the root cause of the fact that people don't make enough money to pay for decent housing, and they end up in this situation where they're bargaining with a landlord who really has no right to have that title.
Sure. So first, I would challenge the idea that we have good landlords. We need rent control in Baltimore City. We need to undo the moratorium on public housing applications that currently exists. My sister applied to public housing like 7 years ago, and luckily, my dad ended up able to put her up, but like still hasn't got a call back. She has 3 kids. One of the things that I've done, because I'm a community organizer and I'm an activist, and like many of you know me from my work in education and against the Hopkins police. But one of the things that I'm like really proud of is we have a ton of public housing in District 12. Almost all of the public housing in East Baltimore is in District 12. There is a public housing unit that I'm not going to name for the protection of the tenants there, but we've helped to organize or start organizing a tenants council. We need to unionize tenants throughout the city, okay? Additionally, we need to start thinking about how to work with community land trusts to offload some of our vacant properties that are city-owned, and allow the community land trust to develop these properties so that we give poor people who have not previously had an opportunity at homeownership a chance to rebuild the generational wealth that has been stolen from black families by redlining and racist zoning practices and all these other things that Baltimore unfortunately invented.
Well, I think, go back to the original question, and when we have, we have people that's living in public housing next to vacant houses. So you got a lose-lose situation. So I guess what the question was asking is why is that they're not inspecting these vacant houses and finding the housing authority for having these vacant houses next to a house that's already in bad condition. So I just wanted to answer that question.
All right, the next question is for Mr. Crum. Why do you feel that you should be there for people in the time of trouble, and you are not the councilman that is supposed to be doing this? I'm not sure.
I get what they're saying. So the question is basically saying that, all right, so from 2012 to 2015, I lost between 30 and 35 friends due to gun violence. And a lot of those friends, I had to carry them to their last site, which was a graveyard. And after that, they'll have to comfort their moms, their daughters, their aunts, not because they only my friends, but because the community, they need somebody to be there with them while they're going through this tragedy. And that's some of the things I have been doing, regardless of me running for city council or not. And a lot of people feel as though that, if this was another certain type of neighborhood where a certain amount of people have died in one area, a councilman or a mayor or somebody will come there and comfort them. And we just haven't been seeing that in the 12th district with the amount of violence that we have had in the last couple of years. And people feel some type of way about it. And I'm just stepping up to do it because, not only to my friends, but the community needs somebody to say, hey, I'm here. I have had several, for this crime walk became so famously done now. We've been doing that back about 3-4 years ago when we, the chaplains and people from the community to do a walk around and we show where everybody had died in the community and things like that. This is the type of stuff that we need besides when the mayor comes around and the cameras are on.
Anybody else want to address that?
I want to talk about trauma, and I understand the violence and trauma. That's why we built a $21 million Roberta House on North Avenue, the first trauma center in the country. I understand it. That's why I support Ms. March on that project. We need that in our community. So we are moving forward. If you go down to North Avenue, you'll see the structure going on. So we will have something in place to deal with trauma in the 12th district or in the city.
Councilman, can you tell us what is a Roberta House? What is that? What is a Roberta House?
Roberta House is a trauma center. Well, what happened was it was on North Avenue, and she left Mr. and Mrs. March's daughter. She moved up to St. Paul Street. We got the funding from the state, $21 million. If you go back past that, we're building now. The structure is built. The trauma is for those persons that had family deaths, all kinds of trauma, but it's the first one in the country in the city.
So we'll go to the next question. This is for Mr. Heilker. I'm a teacher at a school 5 minutes from here, and several of my students are homeless, with many more of them living in precarious financial positions. As a city council member, what can you do to immediately stabilize my students' living situations so they can focus on getting an education?
That's tough. Housing insecurity is comorbid with a number of learning disabilities. It's comorbid with higher push-out or dropout rates in high schools. It's comorbid with substance abuse disorder. It's something that unfortunately a lot of young people experience in Baltimore City, and they're not counted in the way that our chronically homeless people are counted in Baltimore City. As mentioned, we have about 15,000 vacant homes right now, and they are not all livable. I would even say, 10, 20% of them are livable, but they could be. And what we need to be doing is working not with developers, but with communities to retake some of these vacant properties, some of these vacant lots, and do more around affordable housing. And not just affordable. The way we calculate affordable housing right now is kind of dumb, where we say, Catonsville is right over the border, so and affordable there is $950 a month, so we're going to match it against that. It needs to be reflective of the community dynamic within the city neighborhood that it's in, and really create housing opportunities for folks. For students specifically, we shouldn't be holding students accountable for the problems and the tribulations that their parents are going through. A lot of times we shouldn't be holding the parents accountable for the problems and tribulations they're going through. It is very expensive to be poor. So what I would really, really like to see, especially for students experiencing homelessness, is a place to stay. And what we have as options for that are, it's tough to say day one we can do this. We really need to start working on that now so that we have that available as an option on day one for whoever up here ends up.
Does someone else want to address that?
I work closely with Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, Jerry Ann, and it's very fortunate that came up with a young lady who actually slept on the street yesterday. She's 18 years old. We was able to get her in some housing over near Westry, Street. And after that, Mayor's Office of Homeless Services and myself, we are now trying to talk to housing, how we can help her stable. She has a job, but she actually had to sleep on the street. And that's awful that she had to sleep in the street and she worked every day. So we have not addressed the homeless piece, but how we make them whole again and give them some stable housing. So we also working on that also.
So you mentioned the mayor's office on
Homeless services, yeah. The director is Jerry Ann. We work with not just with young people homeless, we got a homeless problem in Baltimore City. Everybody want to feed homeless people, but they have to go to the bathroom, right? I'm the first person that got a mobile unit on Bath Street where they can go to the bathroom, take a shower, get clothing, because that's been an issue. And there's nothing wrong with feeding people, but they have to go to the bathroom. So you hear people talking about they defecating and all that kind of stuff. If you go down to Bath Street, it's 3 days a week. Those persons feel better. They feel whole when they can take a bath. If you don't take a bath and a shower, how you would feel when they don't have nowhere to go to do that. That's why I broke the deal with the gentleman with the mobile shower. And now those persons that's home have an opportunity to even have a washer and a dryer in there so they can wash their clothes. That's how you make people feel whole again, because a lot of people look at homeless people the wrong way. Because we all can be one day away from ourselves.
So I just wanted to ask the audience, I've never heard of the mayor's office of homeless services. How many people have heard of it? Okay, some, but not a lot, yeah. Yes.
So for the teacher that wrote that, like I said, I'm working in Maryville right now, and I believe they have around about 1,700 kids there. They have one social service person there. I believe to address the homelessness in schools and stuff like that, we most definitely need more social service workers inside the school buildings to be able to give them the resources that they need to make sure that they're not sleeping out on the streets. So that'll be one thing I would advocate for as councilman, is to make sure that we get more social workers in schools and the resources that they need to so they won't be go through those things.
And that's what Kerwin should be talking about. Having that in the
Kerwin
school.
does talk about that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if you talk about schools, some schools don't have a social worker. So if you talk about Kerwin, I'm talking about, you spend all the money at Top Heavy in North Avenue, the money don't dwindle down to the schools that need the funding. So as a community, we need to make sure we do the Kerwin, that we make sure every school have a social worker in the school. If not, we're gonna be here again talking about the same thing. They still gonna be top heavy, because we do not hold the school system accountable.
That's
How they spend their money.
Did all of you get a chance to answer that?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is a hard issue for me. I used to work at a place called Project Place. I was a case manager there, and the issue that I saw a lot with kids aging out of foster care, and we still don't have a good response for those young people. And I haven't heard like a silver bullet up here, and I don't have a silver bullet for that teacher. But there are really good pieces that I've heard across the board. We have to show more compassion to people who are facing homelessness. People are really just a paycheck or two, a lot of us. So yeah, I didn't have a response, but I just want to say, yeah, I like what I was hearing, and I'm in agreement with it.
Can I just say, I introduced a charter amendment, because when people live in subsidized housing that an animal should live in, when they go to court, the landlord has a lawyer or he has the manager. The tenant, they don't have nobody. So I introduced a charter amendment, we're gonna put it on the ballot, that money be funded, so when that landlord go to court, he have a lawyer that can help pay to represent him. Right now, it ain't happening. The landlord can be in 8 violations, and because the tenant do not have no representation, guess who wins? The landlord. That's the reason why that tenant bill charter amendment I put in, that's gonna be put on the ballot.
Okay, the next question from the audience is directed towards Mr. Stokes, but it's a question that can be translated into a general question. I'm gonna read it and it can be taken as I said, a general question. It names 2 particular addresses on Lorraine Street, and it says both are vacant. No matter how many times this is reported, the young men stay in these houses who deal drugs all day and night. This has been for the past 2 years, and this is happening in places other than Lorraine Street. So, how would let's just go to Mr. Heilker first.
Sure. Our city has been especially impacted and traumatized by the war on drugs. We have 700 people, as I mentioned, are dying a year from substance abuse disorder and overdose deaths. And as kind of a tangent, straight up, if whoever the next mayor is, if they were able to reduce our substance abuse disorder deaths by half and not stop a single murder, I'd probably vote for him for re-election. I mean, that would be 350 more people who get to live, right? I think what we really need to do, again, the answer to crime is a job. We need to offer opportunities to people, and we need to offer housing to people. You don't stay in a vacant house and sell drugs if you have a stable place to live and a fair-paying job where you know that you've got good benefits and that you've got the opportunity to advance in your career. We're not going to arrest our way out of these problems. We know that. We know that O'Malley tried to do that and arrested fully 20% of the black men in our city. There's no reason that we should continue this pattern just because we are temporarily uncomfortable with activity happening.
So we had guys that hustle in front of vacant houses and basically, if it's 4 guys out there, 3 of them really don't want to be out there. They're trying to survive. And me, the individual, I'm always out in the community trying to help guys with better options. And that's what we have to do. We have to come outside of City Hall, and we have to be able to go directly into the communities and engage with these people. It can work. Like I said, I personally got guys that come in my car and I drove them to job sites. And you're not going to save everybody, but if you save 1 or 2 of them, you've done your job. And until we get that through our head, that we have the same way the police have task force to go after criminals and all that, we have to have a task force to go out here and engage the young people and say, hey, I got an opportunity for you. And I guarantee you, if we do that, we can save a lot of lives and can save a lot of people from going to jail.
The question was about squatters, right? That's funny, up in Washington Hill, there was some squatters within that's part of my community, and there was some squatters they actually had children. So you can't just go in, you gotta evaluate what's there. I was able to work with the Mayor's Office of Home Services, Police Department, and Community Association. We found out, because you can't put squatters out when it's a child. You don't want to put children out the street. We were able to find them housing. We were able to make sure they had the safe children. We worked with the police department and, city to board up that particular house. There's a way to do it, but everybody had to work together. You can't, one agency doing something else and somebody else doing something. We were able to find them some family, somewhere to live, and we were able to coordinate with, housing and police department. And actually, that person was removed from the house, but they wasn't out the street. So he had an opportunity, those agencies working together. That's how you address the squatters. And it did happen in Washington Hill, and actually, the community called me and thanked me because they've been dealing with that for a while. Everybody had to be on the same page together when we talk about squatters.
The question was that the squatters were selling drugs. I
Yeah.
believe, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Young men stay in these houses who get drugs.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to hold property owners accountable for their properties. So if you have a vacant home and you're in the city and you're holding on to that property and you're not redeveloping it, we have to charge you for that. We have to charge additional fines if you're allowing for people to move into the property and you're not securing it the right way. And just to correct a little bit about squatters, and there's a legal process to remove someone who is in a property that doesn't belong there. You would file a wrongful detainer against that person. There is no quick way to do it. A judge has to ultimately decide that that person does not have the right to be there, just for information's sake. But I would be interested in allowing for community associations to actually have a part of that conversation, and to be able to figure out, to be able to quickly report when there's an issue like the question that was presented.
Do you know in Annapolis that landlords have this big legal fund? They got money. They have money. And when you talk about finding them, they can be in Florida. They won't answer until we go down to Annapolis and talk about how we fight the landlords, because the landlords have a big fund. So if they're out of town, we can keep fining $500, $300. And if you want the property, that's almost a 2-year process to even get it through receivership. So until we address what's happening in Annapolis with those landlords, and again, the community go down there and talk about those private owners that don't live in the city, they might live in Florida, and we put fines and fines and fines that don't change because they have a great lobbying group in Annapolis. I done been down there. I done seen communities go down there with the same thing until we go down there and start making some noise. Making some noise to talk about why the landlords that live out of town still haven't addressed their vacant property, because you can still be living next door. If you want to buy it, or the city wanted, it's the receivership piece. It's a legal part. It takes 2 years sometimes to even get ownership of the property.
So real quick, just to rebut against that. So city council, one of the biggest impacts that city council has is land use. There's a lot of decisions around land use that city council has power over. This idea that the landlord's lobby in Annapolis is keeping us from making a guy with a vacant property pay more in property taxes is absolutely absurd. Right now, the way that our property taxes are calculated are by the improvements to the property instead of the footprint of the property. So what we really need to be thinking about as a city, especially with the environmental impacts that we're seeing from climate change, is a Green New Deal for the city, right? And what we do is we change the way that property taxes work so that it's the footprint of the house. So if you live on a block and there's a vacant house down at the end of the block, and that guy lives in New York and he's just a speculator waiting for Johns Hopkins to open something across the street so he can flip the house to someone who's going to invest in it, we can make it so that they have to pay the same amount of property taxes as everyone else on the block. Okay? All of a sudden, we have a lot more money coming in through our tax base because these people who own these speculators who are just parasites, let's call it what it is. These speculators all of a sudden either need to redevelop the house and sell it to someone who will live in it, or rent it to someone who wants to live in it, or they need to sell it to someone who will immediately, because they're not going to go from paying $200 a year in property taxes to paying $2,500 a year in property taxes and just sitting on a vacant shell.
Okay, let's move on to a different area now. This is related to crime in the community. This is directed to Mr. Stokes, and it's generalized to everyone. And it was phrased the way it is because you're the current council person, so I'll read it as is, and you all will see how it penetrates later. Mr. Stokes, when killing occurs around our neighborhood, why do you never show up to give support to the family? And why do you never, are you never seen around the neighborhood until election?
I don't think that's true. I'm never in City Hall. City Hall is a different kind of world. You can't get nothing done in City Hall. Second of all, that's why I had a meeting with community leaders, with the police commissioner, get them face to face with him. If they had some issues, to find out what his crime plan is, and that's why I'm putting together with the police commissioner. I asked for his analysts to analyze Baltimore's neighborhood. So communities work together because it's, and I'm using examples. If on Broadway, one side of Broadway is Broadway East, the other side is out. But when crime happens in the middle strip or the medium strip or Broadway, that's still a crime. There's no division about a community association. So if you bring all the community associations together to work together to come up with a crime plan. Tony Brown, who works for CBCA, he has a crime plan he in charge of. They pinpoint every crime. It could be murder, it could be people going to steal out of CVS. He pinpoint, he followed. He is now going to train the community presidents in my district how to create their own safety plan. And what they do is they follow all the way to court. The impact letter comes from the state's attorney. It's a 5-step process. When they get to court, somebody from Charles Village is there to make sure that that particular person, wherever their crime was, that the judge don't put it on the shelf. You're not in a court room seeing exactly what's happening. So Tony Brown agreed, no pay, to help the community associations in my district how to create their own crime.
So I
Okay,
think,
thank you. Now, I just want to do a little bit of translation for those of you who are not current council people. So I'm going to translate it to, would you come out when someone is severely injured or killed? Do you think that's a council person's position? And will you be seen around the neighborhood?
Absolutely.
This is for these three now. Mr.
So-
Westry?
okay, whatever.
Yes.
Yes, I think, and I listen, I don't know about what that person's, why that person asked the question the way that they did towards Mr. Stokes. But, because I will say this, because I do know there are times where I've seen him be there, but I do recognize that person's question, and it's people want to feel like your city council person is with you, and they want to feel like they have a partner, and they don't want to feel like they're going through something and it's just them and their block and their just surrounding block. I get that, and I think that was the heart of the question. And my goal is to be a partner, whether we're opening up a new grocery store, which I hope we can do on the east side of Greenmount, because we don't have any right now, whether we are opening up affordable housing, whether we are dealing with a horrific issue like somebody being shot. Like, I want to be there for all of those moments, because that is what we really want. We want that partner, and I think that's even when there's a space where you don't have a whole lot that you can do, being there and not just being there for the good times, I think is what people are really asking for.
Mr. Heilker?
Yeah. So first and foremost, Councilman Stokes mentioned that he is never at City Hall. I want to go on record. I'll be at City Hall sometimes. I'll also have a community office where people will be able to engage directly with us. We'll keep office hours. But the question of whether we'll show up when someone is hurt or traumatized or killed, absolutely. And that's something I want to commend one of my opponents, Gary, for. Gary is really, really great at being out in the community when the community's hurting. That's something that I admired about his campaign 4 years ago, and something that I admire about him in that intervening time. That's something that I would like to see, I would like to do more of. For me, this has been something where through activism and advocacy, because I think that Gary would agree with this, you can't just be there when someone dies, right? Like, because there's continuing trauma that happens, and we see that with West Wednesdays, we saw that with the uprising, we see that with Keith Davis, right? Like, we see this because of the trauma that impacts our city, whether it's from the police, whether it's from violence within the community, it continues. So it's not a matter of just showing up that one time, it's a matter of continuing to show up and be a supporter for these people in the communities. And yeah, thanks again for that one.
All right, so let's just raise your hand. In the last 10 years, has anybody had a councilman lived in their neighborhood? one person. When have the last time you seen your councilman walk out your door, go to the same stores you go to, shop at the same markets you shop at? You actually see them face to face, have a conversation with them, they walk in the neighborhood. I haven't seen it in 37 years. So I'm the type of councilman that I know we can't be everywhere all the time, but we can show up in our neighborhoods when things are going good without the cameras, and we can show up when people are going through difficult times. And that's just not, it's not about being a council, that's just about being human. That's about being a neighbor. That's about being engaging with your community. And that's what I'm gonna be as a councilman. That's the type of person I'm going to be. That's the type of things I want to bring. And that's the type of stuff that we need going into a new century.
Can I say something? I'm always in the community. I'm always down Old Town Mall. I'm always at Dr. Bernard Harris. I'm always looking at what's happening in the community when you had a pool that been closed for 11 years and not opening back in August. So I have to see stuff. So I be in City Hall because I chair the Executive Appointments Committee and I sit on 3 different committees. So if you see me in City Hall or I have a meeting, that's where you see me in City Hall. But I am in the community. I'm gonna tell you a good example. I had 2 people in my district. They got carjacked. I'm the one that called them up. I talked to them on the phone. So maybe not that particular incident, whoever had that question. I don't always know when somebody having a rally or somebody got shot. Because when I ask the police for information, they can't give it out because the person, you don't give out people information if they've been carjacked all the time. I was able to get those 2 ladies information and I talked to them on the phone. You can't always get access to information so people don't feel uncomfortable when there's something happens to them like that.
Okay, thank you. This is moving in a completely different direction, and again, this one is directed towards Mr. Stokes, but it can be generalized to all of you. It says the BGE Center substation on 23rd and Huntington Avenue has been building a fence for over the last 8 months and disrupting the neighborhood without notifying our community or residents what can be done. So this goes more to disruption of services. And so if you could start with Mr. Westry.
Yeah, that again, this is why it's important to knock on doors. For the 3 folks who are up here, my campaign has knocked on over 26,000 doors. I know exactly where you're talking about. I know exactly what you mean, and I've talked to a couple of the neighbors who live on the other side of that fence. There's a lot of illegal dumping over there. They've been trying to reach out to the city. The city says it's a state issue. They reach out to the state says it's a city issue. And folks keep just passing the buck. And this is where your city council person is important. They have to say, I'm not going to say, oh, it's this other agency. I'm not going to say, well, I'm not getting the information. I'm not going to say, I'm trying to, that, they have to just take responsibility. It's been years. And that fence needs to be built because people literally will just drop things back there. Most people who have private businesses, they're taking their trucks and they're dumping back there. This is Lower Remington. I know exactly what that person's talking about. And why do I know? I've knocked in that area 4 times already, and I've heard it from several folks who are in that area, and I would take that responsibility on as a city council person.
Mr. Heilker.
Yeah, so I actually live on Huntington Avenue, a member of the Greater Community Association, and that's something that came up at our last community meeting, and it's something that comes up in the neighborhood all the time. We've had just an uncountable number of cutoffs over in the neighborhood because of work that DGE is doing. It's super difficult to get any information from DGE on what's happening next. And this idea of this isn't a city issue, it's a state issue, or this isn't a state issue, it's a city issue. Look, first of all, it's a BGE issue, right? It's not an agency. And second of all, maybe it should be an agency, right? Maybe we need to reclaim our power grid. Delegate Clippinger in 2018 passed a law that allows communities to create solar farms, that we can allow that to subsidize our energy locally. I really think that we need to, and this is a several-year project, but we need to think about municipalizing our power grid, because right now we are at the behest of BGE and whatever they decide to do. If they decide to jump rates up a certain amount, they can do that, right? Like there are certain breaks that are put on that by the state, but it's not enough to keep my aunt who lives over in East Baltimore from having to choose between paying for power and paying for insulin, right? Like it doesn't make any sense. Let's make sure that the people are coming first before gigantic corporate institutions that are really taking advantage of the people in the city.
So I'm not too familiar with the area, but this is what I would do as a councilman. Okay, as I said, it's a BG&E issue. All right, they don't want to do it, and they say it's a state issue. This was your councilman, his contacts with resources, his contacts with different agencies. City council makes $73,000 right now. Let's go out and fix the fence ourselves. Let's find a way to get the stuff done ourselves. If we can't do it, then okay, let's get the cameras involved. Let's get, okay, who we need to put the blast on. These are the things you're supposed to do as a councilman. And why not do it?
Well, I am familiar with that. I work with the community on that issue. And I just reached out to BG&E because the people I was dealing with on the lower level, the liaison, it don't seem to get to the top. So I'm talking to Mr. Ralph, who's in BG&E. But I sit there and talk with them community people about that fence for a long time. So I'm familiar with the issue that they have. BGE, because I don't know whether they state or city, that ain't even an issue for me. We have to hold BG&E accountable, but it has to come from the top. You cannot have liaison people coming to a meeting. It don't go nowhere. It's stuck. They had to go to the top. I'm talking to Mr. Ralph, who works for Exelon. But I am familiar with that, and I sit there and talk with them community about that fence. So I know about it. I know exactly what they had to go through. That's why I reached out to Mr. Ralph, because that needs to be addressed from a higher level for BG&E.
So let's rebuttal. Stokes, you right down there with the mayor.
So it ain't no mayor issue.
No, what I'm saying is
no mayor issue. It's a community. It's my responsibility. I don't have to talk to the mayor to do that.
But it's been
I don't
4
have
years.
to talk to the mayor to do it.
But it's been 4 years.
Because you gotta understand that BG&E has a monopoly. He said it, and they hard to deal with. I went over top, and whether it was 4 years or 3 years, I don't need to talk to the mayor to do what I'm responsible for.
I'm not saying. What I'm saying is that if you have if it's BG&E issue and it's not going nowhere, then how about
because BG&E been changing upper level management for so long that I finally found a gentleman who used to work for Stephanie Barnes in the law department. He is now working for Exelon. So, Mr. Crum, you say you didn't know nothing about it, so how you know
I
it's been 4 years?
It's what they said. They said it's been going on for years.
Yeah, but how many years is that?
So let me ask a clarifying question so we can move on to something else. And my question is, in my neighborhood, we have lots of BGE issues. Nobody knows who to call, and you're right, you call the city, they say it's BGE. You call BGE, and they say it's someone else. I just want a show of hands. Can we come to you for this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let me just
Okay, thank you. On to something else now. Really important issue in the city. What's your position on this? And I'm going to call it the squeegee enterprise. Starting with Mr. Crum.
Say what is it?
What is your position on the squeegee enterprise, the squeegee kit?
I mean, you have some young men down there that's going through a lot of things that's trying to earn some money. And my thing is, why are we chasing young men who's trying to make an honest living and then force them to go on the corner and sell drugs or carjack or rob or anything of that nature? Let's find a way that we can match what they're making out on as a squeegee and give them another option. But not like you got police officers down there now on post, chasing them away. Where are we chasing them to? Because eventually we're going to chase them into doing something worse than what they're already doing. So we got to figure out a way that we can get with them and figure out what's going on at home while they're not in school. But chasing them off and pushing them into doing some other criminal activity is not the way to go.
Mr. Stokes. Well, I don't call them squeegee kids. I call them intersection entrepreneurs. I don't like squeegee. It has a negative effect on it. I am now working with Turnaround Tuesday. We already got a grant to Williams, and we have been out on the phone. The thing is, you have to talk to them young men. You can't just ride past or give them a dollar. I have a good relationship with them. The idea is, I had a young man say he was 17 years old. I said, why are you on the corner? My mama told me to bring back $125. Until you really have a concrete answer for that. So now I'm working with the downtown partnership because the business people need to be in the same room with them young men, because there is, if you look at Fox 45, I know some of them did some violent thing, but if you look at Fox 45, it's always the negative part of it. I've met some of them young men, and they're very polite, but there's no support system when they go home. That's why the mayor's also children and families that have already been out. They got 80 kids that they already took off the street. I go to the corner and talk to them, but it's important that we have a conversation with them. And you can't just give them a job because some of them never worked before. They need support systems at home. I had a guy, I talked to him, he was on the corner. I asked him about the job. You know, he said, I got a job, but I need gas money. So you gotta understand what it is, and I only talk to them because I want them to feel comfortable with me. So when we go back to Gay Street, where I know all of them at, because they can wash cars, that's great. But that's why we talk about apprenticeship, because in wintertime, if you're washing cars outside, where they gonna wash cars at then? Because it's an outside activity. And until we understand that they get $200 a month or $200 a week, we have to counteract that. And that's why I work with the downtown partnership and the business and the young men.
Mr. Westry?
Yeah. So I used to work for an organization called Community Law in Action, and we had a CTE program. CTE is Career Technology Education. And I ran the sort of out of school time opportunities for the kids. So my young people would get trained with me over the summer, and then they would be placed at internships, mentorships around the city, law firms, agents, and city agencies. And I ran the city council page program and the mayor's executive internship program. This was under, Sheila Dixon. This is how old I am. But those kids who have the opportunities to engage with us, those kids who have the opportunities to learn skills that they need, and who are also wanting to work, the outcomes are there. They do well. So we have to strengthen our CTE programs. We also have to get away from this thing where we vilify young people. And I kind of laughed with Mr. Stokes is like, because that's an interesting way to say it. Because these are children. I had my first job at 14 years old. It taught me how to save. It taught me how to be responsible. It taught me how to not waste my money on things that didn't make sense. And that's all these kids are really wanting. In addition to wanting to be able to take something home to their families, we have to be willing to work with those kids, well, we have to start with not demonizing them. And even worse, criminalizing.
So the governor was in town earlier this week, and he made up some lie about how squeegee kids are making like $100 an hour or something like that, which is just like an astronomical amount of money. It works out to like $200,000 a year. It's better than most like very experienced drug dealers are paying. So first we need to like change this narrative that like squeegee kids are criminals, right? Like the reason that they're doing this is because they need money, and they don't need like necessarily just a paycheck, right? Like what they need is a lot of them walking around money, right? Cash in their pocket that day. And that's one of the shortcomings that we have with the mayor's Youth Works program, is that we left 4,000 kids last summer sitting on the sidelines. Kids who did every single thing right. They were just on the wrong side of the alphabet, right? It only costs $1,500 to sponsor a kid for Youth Works for the summer. And that's what, and again, when Councilman Costello and Commissioner Harrison went down to 83 President Street, they weren't talking to the kids, they were talking at and about the kids, right? And so what we need to do is have these conversations with these kids, and that's why I did that, and that's why I hired Zion. Zion is 15 years old. We gave him his first summer job. He had applied to Youth Works, he didn't get in, okay? He applied to other jobs, he didn't get them, and they all said, you just don't have the experience. He's 15. Probably everyone in this room, when they were 15, they heard that from some employer that they applied to. For me, I heard it, but the stakes weren't that high for me. I wasn't helping my mom and dad pay the mortgage. Zion lives in public housing. He has to help his mom with the bills, right? So when Zion worked for me and we paid him $15 an hour, I was giving Zion money day to day too, so that I could make sure that he could make ends meet. We need to really be thinking more creatively about how we address these issues in our city.
I just want to mention that I had business people call me and tell me they need to be arrested. I'm not doing it. That ain't gonna happen, not while I'm the council.
Okay,
Second
great.
of all,
Now, we need to stop now. We need to go on because we're on a tight schedule. What I want to ask you, we're going to be going to the closing statements in just a second. One quick question. Who will commit to coming to the Harwood Community Association meetings first Monday of the month?
I come all the time.
Okay, raise your hand high so people can see it. All right, great. I think we're ready to go to closing statements.
I'm gonna start with
Gary.
Mr. Oh, I'm sorry, pardon?
I'm sure Gary.
Yes, I'm gonna start with Mr. Crum.
All right, so basically, if you've been following me, you know I ran in 2016. I came in third place. And basically, man, I believe that being authentic and being consistent should mean something. You know, we have ended a decade, going into a new one. So I'm just asking the residents to pit the community, help me put the community back into City Hall. I don't believe there's no one on this panel that has worked harder than me in the last 10 years and has an impact and had an impact and inspiration, motivation, and hope in communities that have been left without a voice and representation. And as your next city councilman, I will advocate for us. So I'm asking you on April 28th to vote Barry Crum for city council. Thank you.
Mr. Heilker.
Hi again, I'm Dave Heilker. Thanks for coming tonight. I hope that I've earned your vote by showing you that we can do things better and we can fight for better in Baltimore. We belong in a city that commits to fully funding our public schools because our kids can't wait. We belong in a city that is on the cutting edge of fighting blight, working with community land trusts and environmental activists to lay the groundwork for a Green New Deal locally and nationwide. We belong in a city that fights for water bill relief, saving seniors and working families hundreds of dollars a year and holding parasitic institutions accountable. We belong in a city that inspires hope, a city that starts from the bottom and builds up together. So if you're ready to fight for that kind of better where we all belong, then join us. A vote for me is a vote for all of us. It's a vote for activists, educators, students, parents, seniors, disabled people, people struggling with substance abuse disorder, squeegee kids, right? People struggling with homelessness. In this room and this city, we're all politicians because politics impacts us on the porch, on the bus, on the streets, and on the job. That's why I'm not ashamed to say I'm a politician, because I've been helping pass good policies for the last 5 years and fighting for better in Baltimore for the last 5 years, really my whole life. And the people of Baltimore need that. They need a champion who's not going to just fight for them, but fight alongside them. So in April, let's fight for better together. I hope you'll vote for me, Dave Heilker.
Yeah, I'm running to fight for working families. It's what I've been doing my entire career. I am running because we need an ally at City Hall. I started my campaign with a meeting of about 20 neighbors, some friends, and I just gave them a couple of my ideas. Within 2 months, I had almost 100 individual donors. That was the seed that allowed for us to launch our full campaign in April of 2019. From that point, we ended up with another 200 plus individual donors, regular people, not a dime from a liquor store or a developer, but from just regular folks giving what they can when they can. My campaign has the ideas. I've met with neighbors, I've met with community leaders, I've met with people who didn't realize that they were community leaders. I met with people for coffee. I've said several times I'm a public interest attorney with a background in housing. I'm not an expert in transportation. I'm not an expert in workers' rights, but I've met with these people and I've formed my ideas around experts. And I'm not afraid to bring in people who are smarter than me, and I'm not foolish to think that I'm always the smartest person in the room. I'm proud to have received the early endorsement of the AFL-CIO, UFCW Local 27, Progressive Maryland, 1199 SEIU, 1199. There, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Check out my website when you get a chance, phillipwestry.com.
Thank you. You want somebody with proven results? I ain't got to sit here and say what I do. We talk about a 200, we talk about the street that collapsed down the street. A $250,000 charge for the street cleaning project. I'm the one that got that. When you're talking about a light at Calvin and 23rd Street, the community been trying to get that for 10 years. I got it in 6 months. When you talk about opportunities for young people, apprenticeships, when you talk about we starting recycling in the elementary school, so our young kids understand what environmental sustainability is. When you talk about transparency in the police department, I had to know what happened to the guns in our community. I have an opportunity now. We can take residents in the city, let them see the process when they first identify guns they melt down. When they get to the end of it, the residents can go up to Pennsylvania and watch them guns melted down, because what's been out in the community is what happened to the guns when they give somebody a computer. What happened to the gun? There's no accountability in the police department where the guns are. We formed this community public safety quality of life. You know what the police commissioner told me? He would give me the analyst information, the needs of Baltimore neighborhoods. So each neighborhood will have that. We'll have the information to analyze where their crimes are. We're talking about $330,000 for programming for seniors. We're talking about $400,000 last year that I opened up a pool in Oliver. $400,000 to be closed every 11 years. So I'm asking for your vote, but I have a proven record.
We are now at the end of our forum. We thank the candidates for coming.
Well, the candidates.
We thank all of you who have come to hear the candidates. That's extremely important also, so we give you a hand. The council people, we ask that maybe you go to the back of the room now and take individual questions from the people in attendance. And again, we thank you for being here. And good luck on your commission.
Great job.